guys, welcome back to BellaVet. Today we have a very special guest, Dr. Bryan. And today we kind of wanted to continue this mentorship series and talk a little bit about the pathways after vet school that you can take, especially if you're interested in small animal. And I think this will be really important for vet students who are soon to be graduates, and also pre-vet students, because I feel like so many of us, me especially when I was a pre-vet student, got just so focused on getting into vet school that, you know, we kind of lost sight a little bit of what getting out of vet school and what your first job would be like, and kind of stepping into those doctor shoes would be like. So that'll give you a little taste of that. And yeah, so Dr. Bryan, feel free to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks for having me. It's really fun.
Absolutely.
I'm Jeff Bryan. I decided I wanted to be a veterinarian when I was a very young kid. Read all the James Harriet stories, which of course is much more of a rural vet, which was kind of a funny thing for a kid living in San Francisco when he was in high school. But I started working in veterinary practices when I was in high school, and then just fell in love with exotic animal medicine, and that was my first passion. And so I went through veterinary school planning to be a world-famous exotic animal surgeon, and obviously failed because I'm now an oncologist. But I had some pretty amazing experiences. I was in general practice for 9 years, straight out of vet school. I went to a practice called Irving Street Veterinary Hospital in San Francisco, and we were a very busy, very progressive small animal and exotic animal practice. We were the first practice in the city, for example, to go to every 3-year vaccinations instead of every 1 year, because my boss was really paying attention to what the new trends were on things. So it was a really exciting start to my career. I loved it. I got to work as an on-call veterinarian at the San Francisco Zoo, did some work at the Steinhardt Aquarium in San Francisco, and I even had a job for a while where I worked at a place called Maui Animal Rescue and Sanctuary, where I went 1 week every other month over to Maui and got to live there and take care of these rabbits and birds on Maui, which was pretty cool.
Awesome.
So it was amazing. And then after 9/11 happened, I started to realize that I was maybe not as excited about what I was doing as I had been, and read a book called Who Moved My Cheese. If you want to ruin your life by becoming comfortable with change, you need to read Who Moved My Cheese. And realized that what I really loved doing in my day-to-day job was taking care of cancer patients. And so I, through a really weird series of circumstances, ended up calling the University of Missouri to ask more questions about their potential residency program. Turned out they had a sudden opening in the residency program, and if I was at all interested, I needed to come interview within the next 2 weeks. So I bought a plane ticket and came to Columbia, Missouri, where I didn't know where it was, never mind, had never been here before, and interviewed, met Dr. Henry, and ended up being their resident, and then found out I loved research, so I turned my master's into a PhD, and then after my PhD went to Washington State University for 4 years on faculty, and then had an amazing opportunity to come back here to lead the comparative oncology effort here, and I've been back here since 2011, so 8 years now.
That's amazing. That is quite quite a path that you took. And yeah, I always love asking these questions because while we're all imagining what our future careers will be like, I feel like a lot of us see this very linear path, and I think it's important to talk about how it's okay to have a bit of a diverse path and do other things for a little bit of time and find a new passion. Like, that's all okay to do. So yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing.
And I'll say that the willingness to change paths kept me on the path of just being a veterinarian. I think that I was looking very rapidly in private practice more into being more of a practice owner, entrepreneur, business person, less of a veterinarian, and the veterinary part of it became more stressful and less rewarding, and that's when I realized there was a problem, that I needed to recalibrate to stay loving being a veterinarian, and I love being a veterinarian. So it was a fortunate understanding and fortunate realization at the time. So it's been a good career path for sure.
Good, that's awesome. And I think that segues really nicely into our first topic, and kind of our first pathway that you can take as a new graduate, I think a lot of people take, is into general practice medicine. Small animal, general practice, it's really common, and And I think there's a lot to still talk about with that, like how to find a good job and how to avoid, the burnout that some veterinarians feel. So yeah, I guess any tips that you have about that would be great to hear.
Dr. Richard Meadows would want me to point out that a veterinary degree is a terminal degree. When you are done with veterinary school, you are eligible to be licensed and practice veterinary medicine. And I think that's a really important thing to understand, and I think it's a really important thing to value. We really have the kind of education that gets us to the point of being prepared to practice when we finish. And I certainly experienced as a student when I was at UC Davis that I was with all these amazing world-renowned specialists, and you start to feel like, ooh, maybe that's what I should be, and being a veterinarian in a general practice isn't quite what that is. And I will tell you, I don't agree with that at all. You can have an incredibly rewarding career in general practice. You can do amazing specialized things. I used to do laparoscopy in general practice. We did acupuncture in my practice. We did a lot of neat things. And you just need to be open to pursuing your passions and doing the very best you can with your veterinary education. I think that you'll find that most rewarding for sure.
Awesome.
And you hear a lot about burnout, and we hear a lot about mental health concerns in veterinary practice, and obviously suicide is a terrible problem in our profession. And I will say that I think that one of the best vaccinations against burnout is continuing ed, and my boss really supported that when I first went into practice. So the first thing that I would tell any new grad to look at is when you talk to your prospective employer, find out what their willingness to support continuing ed is. That's critical, because this is a job where you have to learn every day your whole career, and being able to go to continuing ed and get supported learning is really, really useful to keeping your mind active and keeping you current and keeping you doing a good job. And so I think that's really helpful.
Awesome.
The other thing too is I think you do really want to know your practice and know it really well.
Yes.
Where I see students have limited options is where they choose to limit themselves geographically, and sometimes there's a reason to go back to your hometown and work for the practice you're in. In fact, I worked for my first practice when I was an undergraduate as a technician there, and so I really went back to a place where I'd started. That has its own problems because the staff still saw me as the kid that used to work there, and it took a while to gain everyone's trust and respect for sure. But I happened to fall into a practice that was phenomenally supportive, and I love that. I think that if I were talking to my kid self now, I would remind myself to look at all the options and maybe ask more questions and ask about mentoring and ask about quality of life support, and look at the quality of life of the doctors who are there. If their whole life is working in that practice, you should probably be prepared for that to be your life, and if that's what you want, then that may be a good fit. But if you want vacations and you want other positive things in your life outside of work, find practices where that's clearly a priority of the doctors there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I feel like that gives us some good, points to go off of and some good things to think about, especially for new grads. And I thought we could also talk about another pathway after vet school, and that is what I am considering at the moment, and that is emergency. I did a lot of my experience hours in small animal general practice, and I did a smaller amount in emergency, but I just was fascinated with it. Like for me, finding your passion or finding what most interests you in this moment, I can gauge it by how fast the day goes and how often I look at the clock.
Absolutely.
And in some practices I was like, I want to be a vet, but man, I'm looking at the clock every hour. And then in emergency, everything was just so fast paced, it distracted me from that, and I was just focused on what I was doing, and I was like, wait, it's the end of my shift already? This is crazy. And so so for me, that was one of the signs where that kind of pointed me in that direction. But once I got there and I started meeting people who had the job that I thought maybe I would want one day, I got perplexed with this. Should I do an internship or should I not do an internship? Because I had met amazing emergency doctors that had done either path, and I was at this fork in the road and I didn't really know what to do, and people on either side were like, you should do what I did, and it was, which is understandable. They don't have the other perspective, but it was frustrating. So I guess to people who are in that situation? Like, what advice do you have there?
Yeah, I think that emergency is uniquely exciting because of just the pace of it. It has a different aspect in that you don't tend to build the recurrent relationships with clients like you do in a regular general practice, but you're also almost never seeing very routine things. It's something new and exciting each time. The scary part of emergency practice is that, especially for a new grad, there is always the chance that something is going to come through the door so sick or so injured that it's beyond what you're going to be able to react to quickly enough to make a difference. And so you have to accept that that could happen. And then the question is, do you have mentorship in what you're doing to get you where you need to be? And mentorship can happen in either an internship or a new emergency practice situation, for sure. And mentorship can be absent in either an internship or a new emergency practice situation. And so if you're considering an internship because you want to improve your skills as a doctor, make sure that you are going into an internship that has a good mentoring situation. Anybody can learn by the seat of their pants and read like crazy and turn out to be a great doctor. And if you're going to do it without support, I would suggest taking the higher paycheck. If you really want the support and you have an opportunities for support, go with your best opportunity for sure. The one piece of internship that you and I discussed the other day is in the most recent AVMA report that I've seen, they looked at income level 5 years post-internship, and in people who did not go into specialty medicine, there was no advantage to having done an internship as far as your 5 years post-income. And you do lose income in the internship year because you're paid a lot less than you would be in a new practice situation. So you got to weigh that according to your student loan debt, your housing debt, whatever your family situation is, and decide what works for you in making that choice.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. And yeah, that was I would say one of the bigger factors is, I do want to look at my career in a bit more of a long-term fashion. And from my last video on mentorship, we spoke with some people who, really talked a lot about financial success in veterinary medicine, and you can have it. Like I think a lot of people can kind of disregard that or think, get a little discouraged about that, but they were here saying, it is possible. There are things that you have to do. You have to be ready to work really hard, but it is definitely possible. And I think, that's a really big factor, setting yourself up for financial success later. So
it's really true. And, you can succeed if you're not afraid of hard work, if you are excited about what you're doing and your enthusiasm is contagious to your coworkers and your clients. And being a good doctor is a choice you make every day. And you can make yourself a good doctor by being present, by reading and learning, and by getting continuing education continually throughout your career. And if you do those things, you will be engaged, you'll be excited, and it'll be a profession that gives back to you.
Awesome. Definitely. Well, thank you. And one last topic that I think we want to give enough time to, so I think this will be a future video that we do together. And that is, you are a specialist, you are an oncologist, and you are this wealth of advice and information and knowledge, and I'm sure there are quite a few people out there who want to go into a specialty, and that is just a whole other world of, doing the match or VIRMP. That whole system is, that's a big commitment, and residency is a big commitment, and it's a long-term goal in taking boards. It's, it's so much to discuss.
Yep.
And so yeah, we would love to have you join us in a future video to talk about all of that.
Be very excited to, definitely.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like and please subscribe. And yeah, tune in again for another video with Dr. Bryan in the future.
Sounds good.
Okay, bye. Cool.